Craig Foster Fozz, how you going?
I'm well. How you doing?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Mate, thank you for spending some time with me. As I mentioned offline, um, I've been really inspired by the humanitarian work that you've been doing for the last few years, particularly
Great.
with the Save for King campaign last year when you saw him come home. That was amazing and it really touched me, Foz, to be perfectly honest, mate. The stuff you're doing now, GameOver, you've got the shirt on. Can you share it in your words? What does it mean to you and what's it all about?
Well, it's just about people who are suffering and in pain, and they need our help. All of us. That's what I've been sharing for the last couple of months. Stories from them every day. I went to see the guys offshore in Port Moresby, asylum seekers and refugees they are, and that's what we call them. That's the terms that they have, but they're just like you and I, right? As I keep saying, they're our colleagues, they're our friends, and when it comes to football, and many of these people are from countries that play football, and quite a lot of them actually are football lovers and players themselves. Countries like Sudan, South Sudan, and Iraq, Iran, Syria, and others. Mate, they're just the same people as us. That's all. And they've been put in hell basically for the last 7 years. So once the Hakeem stuff was finished, and probably during that, a lot of people reached out from offshore, including some of these guys actually, because they reached out to me and said, look, you guys, all of you are doing a really fabulous job for Hakeem, but we also need help, and we're in a really horrendous situation here. And I had to say to them, look, during this campaign, hopefully we can get him out pretty quickly. But it needs a lot of focus, and I'm going to have to do some travel on these things. So I'm just not able to do the two at once. And that's one of the difficulties in this space is, so many people that need help, and unfortunately, sadly, you have to make choices to focus on certain areas. But I said, look, as soon as we're finished, I'll come and help you guys and do whatever I can, right? Because, I've long thought that it's just disgraceful what Australia's been doing. So I went over to Port Moresby late last year, just around the launch of the book, Fighting for Hakeem. And the idea was to launch the book and kind of capture that goodwill and the great feeling that we all had from helping Hakeem, and transfer it across to these guys offshore and also onshore, because there's a lot of people here who also need help, particularly those who came on Medivac and are still in limbo and are basically locked up. So nothing's changed for them. But essentially, I wanted to bring the stories of the people offshore for 7 years who are still suffering really badly every day, bring that to broader Australia and use the platform that I have to say, look, we just have to bring this to an end. There's two reasons for that. One is because I just feel for these human beings. Whilst I do obviously I'm known for my work in football and as an ex-player and all these things, I've long for the last 20 years worked in a range of social programs, Indigenous kids, homeless, with the Homeless World Cup and the street Socceroos, and even domestic violence and refugee kids with Football United program. This is just an extension of that. It's just about helping people who I have the opportunity to help. But these guys are really in a shocking situation. They're in really deep pain. And when I went over there and actually met them and saw them, I just kind of said, look, I've just got to do whatever I can, and I won't stop until these people get to safety.
That's unbelievable, Foz. I mean, I've actually seen some of the videos on the site, and we're going to share the GameOver link with everybody later. But
yeah,
having a look at some of those conditions that these people are living in, I couldn't imagine living there for a month, let alone 7 years. It's been phenomenal. It's been crazy.
Yeah, look, I said before, it's for two reasons. Number one is because I know I can help these people. And so therefore, I have to at least try. But I can at least share their stories. I can bring it to the world, and not just Australia, because now I have a platform where people in human rights and sport and human rights and others and sporting personalities and people around the world are watching. So I can use that platform for them to tell their story here and elsewhere. And many of them, you know, we've got a process into place to send them to other countries. You know, we're just trying to get them to safety anyway. But the other reason why I feel strongly about it is because I just don't think this is Australia. And, you know, I said that during the Hakeem campaign, and immediately after I said, look, I cannot understand, I cannot accept that this is what we've done. You know, I know that there had to be a policy response, you know, something had to be done, but this is not it, right? And whatever happens in relation to asylum seekers and refugees, it's a big problem around the world. These people have a right to do it. They're human beings. They've been badly demonised. There's been lies told about them. There's been a really concerted campaign to try and keep them there, and I'm committed to getting them free, seeing their freedom. But equally, I just believe that for all of us, there is a benchmark and a bottom red line of human rights and treatment of other people that we cannot go under. Okay? Great. So people, yeah. So in this space, what happens is people go, oh yeah, but what about this and what about that? And of course, there's a whole heap of misinformation, and most of it's completely inaccurate. But anyway, they'll say, well, what about here? And, you know, how are we going to stop this? And all I say to them is, well, there's many, many ways to do that. However, what we must agree on is that whatever we do, whatever our response is as a country, you can't torture people, and there's a benchmark under which we can't go. And we have descended way below it. And that's just the simple reality. So my view on this campaign is to just say to Australia, we can all have our views and keep arguing forever about how you want to manage refugees and asylum seekers coming to Australia. That's fine. We can have that debate. We can have that argument, and everyone can get very emotional about it. But while you have that argument, these people are dying, okay? Some are dying slow. Many of them have taken their life. There's been 12 people died offshore and one who died here who had recently come. That's 13 people dead. And the people I met, some of them are so heavily medicated, they've got scars on their arms from trying to commit suicide multiple times. We're talking about lives here, okay? We're not talking about policy. We're talking about lives. And what's happened is Australia, like many countries around the world, we've forgotten about the human beings. We're talking about policy without giving any consideration to the people, to the humans. And what I'm trying to do, what I'm saying to Australia is, let's turn that equation on its head. Let's have a minimum treatment of people that we accept as being part of the nature of Australia and the nature of being Australian. Then, once we accept that, on top of that, you guys can argue forever and put policy into place. You know, I get it. The reason I'm taking that approach, for those who might ask, is because the more we argue about policy, and I have my views on the policy, different aspects, but the more I argue or buy into that space, the longer time this is going to take. And these people have been there for 7 years and they're dying. They are dying either quickly or slowly. Okay, and every time I speak to them, it's incredibly, well, I'm not qualified to speak to them. You know, I did a Skype conversation with one of the guys who I know well and who I'm helping in a whole host of ways. You know, sending stuff, sending equipment, this and that, sharing his story, and it's really shocking. It's really shocking. It's the type of conversation that I never expected I would have to have with another human being, certainly not sitting in Australia and talking to someone who's under our care. Forget that they're in Papua New Guinea, they're under our care and our administration. And of course, the High Court of Australia has ruled that's the case. So I never expected that I would have to talk to someone so psychologically in pain that, you know, I'm in a position where I'm not qualified to speak to them, but they want me to share their stories. And that's a situation that's quite fraught. It's because you don't know what's going to happen. But ultimately, I have to try for them. Otherwise, they're going to be there for years and they're not going to survive.
Well, you're definitely putting everything into place, Fozz, and your passion comes through just on your words and everything that you are doing. So when you say you're trying, from people that are watching on the outskirts and aren't in the cold face from you, you're definitely doing that, and you're definitely touching me today from the discussions that you're having. So I don't know if you can tell it in my voice, but you are.
Yeah.
What else can we do? Can the people do to support the Game Over campaign? I understand that there's the link. People can sign the petition. There's social media resources. What else can they do, Fozz? What can we do?
So basically gameover.org.au, which I know you'll share. On there, they can sign a petition and then share it on social media. That's a good start. The reason it's necessary is just to take that action is because that becomes our database. And when we move into the next phase of the campaign in the next month or so, which is write to MPs, in National Day of Action, come out and do some stuff, then, that becomes the database to people that we respond to and talk to. So that's important. Sharing on social media is important. We're putting together a 7-hour film to reflect the 7 years of suffering. So we're asking people to just share a simple video on social media, which just says, I support I'm such and such from somewhere, and I support Game Over because, and those things have been really powerful. And of course, we've got, a whole host of high profile people, which is important, Jimmy Barnes and Brian Brown and Anthony Napoli, a lot of friends of mine, who are doing a great job in this space. And like me, they feel obligated to use their profile. And that's, I think, wonderful. Thirdly, though, on that website, there's opportunity for organisations to then pledge their support. And I'll say again, we're not pledging support for any policy. We're pledging support on a humanitarian campaign just to get these people to safety. So in my view, this is not a politicised campaign. It's a humanitarian campaign. That's why people feel comfortable being involved. It's a deeply politicised area, but we're not getting involved in that. What we're saying is, no, you guys can argue with all that. Just get them to safety. Okay, we just don't accept this anymore. We just want these people to be resettled and to get on with their lives and get the medical care they need. And we're not being quiet anymore on that. Okay, so get your organisation involved. Send an email around to all your employees. Send an email to your CEO, or if you're the CEO, send it around and ask people if they'd like to support it. Get people to commit to it and commit as an organisation. We're asking all sporting clubs to do so, because these guys offshore are footballers, cricketers. There's a world champion boxer there who's still in Port Moresby. It's just extraordinary stuff. Who I might say is exactly like Hakeem, and that's the point of the campaign. Is that we all went and helped Hakeem because he got into Australia. He sought asylum in a different way, exactly the same as what these guys have done. And some of them offshore are exactly like him, young athletes with a budding career, and their career is virtually lost. I think Ezatullah Kakar, people can look him up. He might have gone when he was like 21, and he's probably 28 now. So these guys have lost the best years of their lives. That's how really seriously sad it is. Share that thing, get your organisation involved. On the website is facility to write to your local MP. That's really important. I want to see these people resettled and get to safety. The reason that language is important is because there's the deal from New Zealand, which is on the table. For 5 years, New Zealand have wanted to take 150 people. There's 489 people still offshore. So therefore, that 750 people would have ended it a year ago. They all would have been to safety, okay? And that 489 people are waking up every day and having to do the same thing and try and have some hope for the next day. And it's incredibly difficult for them to do that. I can't explain to you how difficult that is for a human being. What I saw was that when you take hope away and even reason, there's no reason. So they say, well, the policy changed on might have been the 19th of July in 2013. And, my friend came the day before and he's in Australia doing something. And I came 24 hours later and I'm locked up for 7 years and I haven't seen my children. So people have to try and understand how when there's no reason or logic to it, it's a 24-hour, government changes policy, but human beings are the same in that 24 hours, and so honestly, they look at you and say, well, my friends are there and I've been here over 2,000 days. Every day I wake up, I take my medication for depression. I try to survive. I've tried to take my life a few times. I'm trying to have hope, but I just don't know how I can have hope anymore, right? And before I went, I spoke to a psychiatrist, and they said to me, you've got to be very careful of giving them hope, because they've been let down so many times that they're so psychologically fragile that the reality is they can take their life. Now, this is horrible to talk about, but what I'm saying to Australia is we did this. Like, these are our people. These are people who are coming here, right? And we can't let it go on anymore. So do those things is great. We'll have a National Day of Action in a few months' time. We'll go down to Canberra and we'll engage the MPs. And when the time comes, everyone needs to be stepping up now and then saying, accept the deal to New Zealand and let all these people get over there. Okay, we need them to get out of Port Moresby. It's dangerous. They're in a horrible situation, and we've still got 250 or 232, I think, on Nauru, who we don't even hear from. They're just suffering every day. And when you've got no voice, you've got no visibility. That is, I would imagine, for a human being, it's got to be about the worst spot to be in. They look and they say, no one cares. The guy said to me yesterday, Samad, his name is, I'll share his stuff next week. He said, you know what, this campaign is our only hope, because he said, no one cares about us. He said, we've been here 7 years. And the only volunteers and a few journalists and you guys with this campaign, no one comes over, politicians don't come over. You see what I mean? They feel rightly like they're the lost people, like they're the damned, right? And what I'm saying is we'll be damned if we let it go on, right? It's time, as Australians, we say, put a stop to this rubbish and let these people get on with their lives.
Game over indeed, Fozz. Absolutely. Mate, thank you. Again, it's inspirational. I want to know more about the Day in Action in Canberra in a few months, if that's open to people. If I can do something personally more and come and support that, I'm more than happy to come down and put my further support behind the campaign, because I definitely feel it's one that's worthwhile, and all Australians need to get behind it. So I agree with you every step of the way. Fozz, anything else before I let you go? I understand you're heading out now to do more fantastic work.
All good. No, thanks for getting in touch. Look, it's important. I'm happy to speak to anyone who wants to do so. I'm going into the universities to speak to some of the student councils soon. We're going to do some education pieces for professional athletes around the country. We're going to put a webinar on shortly for all of the former and current professional athletes to tell them, give them the facts, tell them what's been happening, show them the stories, and get their support to bring this to an end. So I'm going to be doing that across a whole range of industries. I'm happy to come and speak to people. It's the more that you meet these people, get to know them, befriend them, and realise, what actual great humans they are, the stronger your commitment becomes, I think, hopefully all of us, to just bring this to an end. So let's make it happen.
Agreed. And on that perfect note, Fozz, I'll let you go. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Thanks, buddy. My pleasure.